You go. That's the part nobody names. You're not the person who avoids the gathering or declines the invitation. You show up. You stand in the room. The music is real. The laughter is real. The conversation is happening all around you. And somewhere between the door and the middle of it, you become completely unreachable. Not to the people around you. To yourself. Surrounded and alone. And when you get home, you'll find yourself sitting quietly with a feeling you can't explain. That you were just in a room full of people and managed to feel the absence of every single one of them. This isn't avoidance. It isn't shyness. It's something more specific, the gap between being present somewhere and actually belonging there. Why do some people feel the crowd from the inside and still feel alone within it? The first thing to understand is that loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. They don't even live in the same part of the nervous system. Loneliness is a deficit state, what happens when your need for connection goes unmet. There is a reaching quality to it, a quiet hunger. And here is the part that matters. You can feel lonely in a crowded room, in a relationship, even while being constantly surrounded by people. Loneliness isn't about physical isolation. It's about emotional absence, your system searching for something it can't find, even when everything around you says you should have found it already. Solitude is the opposite. Not something that happens to you, something you enter. When you choose solitude, you're not lacking connection. You're resting from it. Your nervous system isn't scanning for validation. It's settling, reorganizing, returning to itself. Loneliness pulls you outward, reminding you of what's missing. Solitude brings you inward, reminding you of what's already there. Psychologists use the term aloneness to describe the frustration that arises when someone who needs quiet doesn't receive enough of it, when constant interaction doesn't feel nourishing but depleting. And without solitude, they don't just feel tired, they feel scattered, unclear, slightly dissolved. The person who feels alone in a crowd is usually experiencing both realities at once. They are in the room, they are lonely inside it, and they already know that leaving won't fully solve it. For many people, the experience of social interaction isn't emotionally painful, it's neurologically expensive. Their nervous systems process stimulation more intensely. Conversations require more cognitive bandwidth. Background noise, shifting social cues, and constant emotional monitoring all add up faster than they do for others. This is why some people leave a gathering feeling energized, while others leave feeling strangely hollow, not sad, not offended, just depleted. There is a term for this: social hangover. That foggy, overexposed feeling after too much interaction, difficulty focusing, a desire for silence that feels almost physical. This isn't a weakness, it's recovery. Once a sensitive nervous system crosses its threshold, the body shifts from engagement into self-protection. The mind pulls inward not because it dislikes people, but because it needs to stabilize. And needing less stimulation does not mean you need less connection. It means your system requires connection in different doses, at different rhythms, shorter interactions, deeper conversations, longer recovery periods. Quiet isn't an escape from life. It's the maintenance that allows you to return to it intact. If any part of this feels like your experience, take a moment to drop a like. It helps more people find conversations like this one. And if you want more psychology that goes this deep, subscribing is the best way to stay. Research in evolutionary psychology, called the Savannah theory of happiness, helps explain why the crowd never quite reaches some people. Our brains still carry preferences shaped by early human environments, small groups, predictable rhythms, familiar faces. For most people, frequent social interaction aligns with that ancient wiring. But researchers found a consistent exception. Individuals with higher cognitive complexity often report lower life satisfaction when they socialize more frequently, not because they dislike people, but because their attention is pulled elsewhere, toward ideas, toward long-term problems, toward abstract questions that require uninterrupted focus. Depth changes the equation. When your mind is constantly running beneath the surface, casual interaction can feel like friction, not wrong, just misaligned. Socializing becomes pleasant but costly, consuming the mental bandwidth needed for thinking, creating, integrating. The question stops being what's wrong with me and becomes, what environment allows my mind to function? Some minds process outwardly through constant exchange. Others process inwardly through synthesis and reflection. Neither is superior, but confusing one for the other creates unnecessary shame. The word introvert eventually stops being enough. It explains where energy goes, not how someone moves through the world. What describes these people more precisely is a trait psychologists call autonomy, the ability to regulate yourself from the inside. Your values aren't borrowed from the room you're in. Your sense of worth doesn't rise or fall with approval. While most people unconsciously scan social environments for cues about how to act, self-guided individuals rely on an internal compass. They don't need to perform alignment, they already know where they stand. From the outside, this can look like detachment. But internally, something quite different is happening. A quiet steadiness, less urgency to be understood, less fear of being misread. Their nervous system isn't calibrated to constant feedback. Because these people don't rely on social mirroring to feel real, they can stand alone in a crowd without collapsing into self-doubt. They're not withdrawing from others. They're anchored in themselves. For most people, small talk is harmless, a social warm-up. But for those wired for depth, it can feel strangely exhausting. Not because it's awkward, but because it's empty of meaning. Surface-level conversations demand performance. Smiling at the right moments, reacting with just enough interest, tracking cues that don't actually matter. Your mind is busy, but not engaged. You're present yet, internally drifting. Depth-oriented people are drawn to exchanges that move somewhere, questions that open rather than merely fill space. When that depth isn't available, remaining silent feels more honest than pretending interest. In small talk, many people wear a social version of themselves, lighter, simpler, less complex. For someone whose inner world runs deep, that mask can feel like a slow eraser, not dramatic, just steadily draining. Choosing silence isn't rejection. It was never about being antisocial. It was about being sincere. When solitude is chosen rather than forced, it becomes more than rest, it becomes an incubator. Your attention stops fragmenting. The constant work of monitoring others fades. In that absence of demand, the mind finally has room to organize itself. Thoughts unfold fully without interruption. Ideas connect across time. Emotions postponed in conversation can finally surface, be felt, and integrated. Solitude gives the psyche a chance to metabolize experience rather than constantly react to it. Neurologically, this inward state activates a different reward system. Instead of the high arousal stimulation of social feedback, the brain releases chemicals associated with focus, calm, engagement, and sustained attention. This is the foundation of the flow state conditions, where curiosity deepens, where half-formed ideas aren't rushed into performance, where self-expression doesn't need an audience to be real. Solitude at its best isn't an escape from life. It's where life is quietly assembled, piece by piece, before being carried back into the world with clarity and intention. But solitude can be a sanctuary, or it can become armor. Healthy solitude is chosen, it restores you and sends you back more grounded than before. The shift begins when solitude stops being about nourishment and starts being about protection, not from noise, but from risk. When being alone is no longer about peace, but about avoiding disappointment. When silence isn't restful but rigid. When the thought of connection doesn't feel curious but threatening. That's when solitude has quietly turned into a defensive structure, formed after being misunderstood too many times, after having your depth dismissed or your words twisted. Withdrawal starts to feel safer than engagement. And over time, the nervous system learns a dangerous equation. Distance equals safety. This is not solitude. This is hiding. The warning signs aren't dramatic: a growing bitterness, a shrinking emotional range, losing interest in being known at all. Even the most self-directed people need real contact, not constant connection, but a few relationships where you don't have to perform or explain your wiring. Solitude should be a place you visit, not a place you disappear into. The feeling of being alone in a crowd is not a flaw in your social wiring. It is a precise signal that the kind of connection available in that room is not the kind your nervous system can actually use. You weren't absent. You were present in the only way available to someone whose inner life runs deep enough that surface contact barely reaches it. The gap between presence and belonging doesn't close by trying harder. It closes by finding the rooms, and the people, where depth is the entry point, where silence isn't suspicious, where you can be known without first performing yourself into someone smaller. When those people exist in your life, and there are fewer of them, but they do something fundamental shifts. You stop measuring your worth by how quickly others respond or include you. Your stability no longer lives outside of you. You can choose a connection rather than cling to it. And the connections you build become cleaner, calmer, more honest. The ability to be alone and connected at once, without betraying either, that is not a contradiction. It is the thing you have been looking for all along. Before you go, take a moment to reflect. What part of yourself have you been carrying quietly, waiting for someone or someplace to truly recognize it? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's honor the depth that often goes unseen. If you want to continue exploring these deep dives together, hit subscribe. Remember, being alone in a crowd doesn't mean you're invisible. It means your life has a depth worth protecting, and the right connections will always find you. Thank you for watching.